It's Friday, November 28th, and today we're doing something a little different. This is a special, single-story episode where we slow down and really dig into one big promise that could reshape both the U.S. tax system and the lives of immigrants and foreign workers. We're talking about Donald Trump's late 2025 pledge to cut and maybe completely eliminate federal income tax for most Americans within about 2 years, and to replace that money with massive tariffs. Now, on the surface, this can sound exciting, especially if you're an immigrant worker who files a U.S. tax return every year. Zero federal income tax if you make under $200,000? For a lot of H-1B professionals, L-1 transferees, STEM grads on OPT, even many new green card holders, that could sound like a huge raise. But as with most big promises, the details matter. And they matter a lot for people whose immigration status is deeply tied to their jobs, their pay, and the broader economy. Here's what Trump has talked about. He says that Americans earning under $200,000 a year could see their federal income tax cut to zero first. To keep the government funded, he's floated a universal 10% tariff on all imports, plus a 60% tariff on imports from China and possibly other targeted tariffs on top. The claim is that these tariffs would not only replace income tax revenue, but even help pay down the national debt. To understand why this is such a big deal for immigrants, we have to connect it to how the immigration system actually works. Most immigrants in the United States who work legally pay federal income tax just like U.S. citizens. That includes H-1B tech workers, L-1 managers, TM professionals, and many students who move into work visas. Those tax records are more than just numbers on a form. Sponsors of family-based immigrants, for example, usually have to file an Affidavit of Support on Form I-864 and attach U.S. tax returns or IRS transcripts to prove they earn enough to support their relatives. So one immediate question is, if federal income tax for many people went to zero, what does an immigration officer look at on your tax return? The form itself probably wouldn't disappear, because you still have things like Social Security tax, Medicare tax, possibly state income tax, and other information. But immigration agencies are used to seeing a certain pattern of reported federal income and tax paid. If the law changed, USCIS and the State Department would eventually have to update their policies, their forms, and their internal training. That kind of change takes time. So even if Congress passed a tax overhaul quickly, expect a lag before immigration rules fully catch up. Another big piece is the math and the economic impact. Right now, federal income tax is one of the largest sources of money for the U.S. government, paying for things like defense, federal workers, salaries, research, parts of healthcare programs, and more. Replacing a huge chunk of that with tariffs means making everyday goods more expensive, because tariffs are basically taxes on imports. Businesses typically pass those higher costs on to consumers. For immigrants and foreign workers, that could show up in several ways. First, your paycheck might look bigger if you're paying little or no federal income tax, but your rent, groceries, electronics, and imported products could all cost more. If you send money home to family abroad, your budget might not stretch as far, even if your take-home pay goes up on paper. Second, companies that rely heavily on imported parts or products could see their costs jump, which might lead them to cut jobs, freeze hiring, or shift operations. That's a direct concern if you're on an H-1B, L-1, or other employment-based visa that depends on a stable employer. Then there's the question of whether the numbers actually add up. Independent budget experts have often warned that broad tariffs at the levels discussed would likely raise prices and strain trade relationships, but might still not bring in enough revenue to fully replace federal income tax for most Americans. If tariffs don't cover the gap, the government would have to borrow more, cut spending, or eventually add new kinds of taxes. For immigrants, that uncertainty matters, because economic instability is one of the fastest ways to trigger job losses, delayed hiring, and stricter scrutiny of visa programs. Timing is another key dimension. Trump has framed this as something that could happen within about 2 years. But any major tax change would need Congress, detailed legislation, and a transition plan. It's not something that can just be done overnight by a speech. So if you're planning an H-1B filing, a green card process, or sponsoring a spouse or parents over the next few years, It's important to see this more as a possible direction of policy rather than a guaranteed reality on a specific date. The political fight over this would be intense, and details could shift a lot from the campaign promise to any actual law. So what can immigrants and foreign workers do right now with all this talk in the air? First, stay informed, but don't make drastic life decisions based only on a proposal. Keep filing your taxes correctly under the current rules, and keep copies of your returns and IRS transcripts, because they remain essential evidence for many immigration applications. Second, pay attention to your total financial picture, not just your income tax line. Think about your cost of living, your emergency savings, and how changes in the broader economy might affect your job security. If you're planning to sponsor a family member, talk with an immigration professional about how you document your income, especially if future rules rely more on wages, employment letters, or other proof instead of just tax amounts. And if you're in a field that is sensitive to trade policy, like manufacturing or high-tech hardware, be extra mindful that big shifts in tariff policy could reshape where your employer invests and hires. We'll keep tracking this story as it develops, because big promises about taxes are never just about numbers. They shape the economy that supports your job, your visa, and your long-term plan to stay in the United States. For more detailed immigration coverage and practical guidance, visit visaverge.com and stay tuned for future updates.